Have you ever agreed with someone only to realize later that what you agreed to didn't even make sense? Maybe it was an advertisement. Maybe it was a political speech. Maybe it was a toxic partner convincing you that you were the problem. And you ask yourself, why did I nod along? Why did I believe them? The answer is because hypnotic language is designed to make you stop questioning. The first principle is slow pacing and the sweet voice trap. When someone speaks very gently, very softly, very slowly, your subconscious doesn't register danger. Your guard goes down. You start to feel safe. And that is the trap. Because while your conscious mind is relaxing, your unconscious mind is opening its gates. Into that open door, suggestions slip through, straight into your nervous system. The manipulator may say things like, "You don't need to think too hard right now, or you'll realize later that this was the right choice." The voice feels safe. The rhythm feels comforting. But beneath that sweetness lies a command. And suddenly, you're moving in the direction they want. Not because you decided, but because the suggestion bypassed your decision-making altogether. This is how cult leaders keep followers loyal. It's how toxic partners convince you to accept behaviors you would never accept otherwise. Not by shouting, not by force, but by sounding so kind, so caring, that your subconscious mistakes control for love. The second principle is vivid imagery and emotional triggers. Imagine for a moment standing on a warm beach. The sun on your skin, the sound of waves, the calm rising in your chest. For just a second, your body started to feel that calm, even though you're not at the beach. That's because your brain doesn't distinguish strongly between what you imagine and what you experience. And once you're emotionally immersed in that picture, a manipulator can slip in suggestions. As you feel this calm, you realize you can trust me. The suggestion rides on the emotional state. The third principle is ambiguity and the illusion of choice. A manipulator might say, "You can either calm down now or take a few minutes and calm down later. Either way, the command is the same, calm down." But because you feel you were given a choice, your resistance shuts off. That's called a double bind. The fourth principle is embedded commands. A manipulator doesn't say, "Do this." That would trigger resistance. Instead, they say, "As you continue listening, you'll begin to understand why this makes sense." It doesn't sound like a command. But your unconscious mind takes it in as if it were. That's how people end up acting against their own interests, believing they freely chose what was really suggested. The fifth principle is rhythm and repetition. Human beings are creatures of pattern. That's why music works. That's why prayers and chants work. If you repeat something with the right cadence, over and over again, it begins to feel true, regardless of whether it is. This is how propaganda works. It's how advertising works. It's how abusers work. Say it often enough. Say it rhythmically enough. And the brain confuses familiarity with truth. The sixth principle is what psychologists call the cognitive hypothesis. The human brain has a deep tendency to seek coherence. We want things to make sense even if they don't. So when someone uses hypnotic language filled with contradictions or half-truths, your mind doesn't just reject it. Instead, it starts filling in the gaps. It forces the chaos into order. And here's the dangerous part. When you create the missing logic in their statement, you start believing you understood their idea. But in reality, it was never their clarity. It was your brain working overtime to protect itself from confusion. This makes you even more vulnerable, because now you feel a sense of ownership over their message. You'll defend it. You'll repeat it. Not because it was logical, but because your brain needed it to be. That's the cognitive trap. Your own intelligence, your own reasoning power, becomes the very tool of manipulation. So why does this work at all? Because language is not just communication, it's survival. Human beings didn't become the dominant species by strength or speed. We became dominant by coordinating, persuading, and aligning large groups with shared stories and beliefs. Your brain is wired from evolution to be influenced by language. In fact, you want to be influenced. Because belonging to the group once meant survival, and that ancient wiring is exactly what dark psychology hijacks. This isn't just cult leaders or politicians. It could be a partner who says, "If you loved me, you'd do this." It could be a boss repeating, "We're a family here," while exploiting your loyalty. It could be an ad telling you, "You deserve this happiness, buy now." In each case, hypnotic language bends your perception, and you don't notice until it's too late. So what can you do? Learn to spot double binds. When all the choices lead to the same outcome, ask yourself, what's missing here? Be wary of repetition. If you hear the same emotionally loaded phrase again and again, stop. Ask, is this true or just familiar? Recognize embedded commands. Anytime someone slips in, as you think about this, you'll agree. Stop. That's not your thought. That's programming. Balance emotion with reason. Emotion is powerful, but without analysis, it becomes a leash. Hypnotic language is not always sinister. In therapy, in healing, in teaching, it can transform lives. But in the hands of dark psychology, it becomes something else entirely. Because hypnotic language is not just words, it's control. So the question you must ask, every time someone speaks with unusual fluency, every time their words feel strangely compelling, is this: where is this taking me? And do I actually want to go there? Because the words you let in will either enslave you or set you free, and the choice is yours.